Bring it on, bring it on. You, bring it on.
Life know the sweet though, eh? If some people know the hate too. So
our keynote speaker this morning is Dr. Jude Nwokike. He's a man who works to ensure that what you have in the medicine bottle is effective and of global standards. Very particular. Like Dr. Ben said, he'll be joining us virtually. But before we invite him, please, let's take a moment to listen to his citation.
Dr. Jude Nwokike is the Vice President, Supply Chain Resilience at United States Pharmacopeia, USP. He brings over 20 years of distinguished leadership in medical products development, quality assurance, regulatory systems strengthening, and pharmaceutical systems. As Vice President at USP, he has led several global initiatives to ensure the quality and safety of medicines and spearheaded efforts to enhance the adoption of manufacturing standards and regulatory frameworks across nearly 60 countries, overcoming bottlenecks to accelerate access to life-saving medicines. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present to you the keynote speaker, Dr. Jude Nwokike.
Thank you very much, and I want to check that you can hear me well. I might just show my camera briefly, and then I take it off to enable me come through very well. Please, can you confirm you can hear me? All right, thank you. So today I'm speaking about unlocking the healthcare value chain in pharmaceutical compounding, and I will start with a few questions. I want to test the audience, just to keep you all alert, right? So my first question is, when do USP standards become official? And maybe Dr. Ben and others there will, note how you feel towards this question, whether there's a sign that all of you understand the answer or not. But note your answer somewhere on a jotter, because towards the end we'll confirm what the answer is for you. So I have just got two questions. One is, when does USP standards become official? If you go to the next slide, you see second question. Next slide, please. And which of the following standards are available for compounders in the compounding compendium of the United States Pharmacopeia? So go to the first slide of my talk, and I'll give you the outline of what I'm speaking about today. Next slide. Right, so today we'll talk about USP, and so yes, right there to it. So most of you are familiar. I wouldn't spend time because some of you or most of you went to pharmacy school. I often say that between the USP, United States Pharmacopeia, the book itself, and Remington, our Goodman and Gilman basis of pharmacology and therapeutics. That's the two most important or popular tests that we all had in pharmacy schools. But really, I'm not sure most of you are aware that the United States Pharmacopeia was established in 1820, and really was established by a group of physicians who were frustrated by the poor quality medicines that were being shipped to the new nation, United States of America, from Britain. Right, and so they were worried about that. They couldn't understand the makeup of those products, and surely the claims that those products were making. And so it was the first official pharmacopoeia that existed. These 11 physicians really felt the need for us to really understand what is the content of these preparations, hence the recipe that is now today called United States Pharmacopeia. They were joined subsequently by a group of pharmacists, and you have USP and NF. There were 67 medicines in the first USP. They were really phytochemistry, botanical medicines, and it was all about what I call the truth in the label. In other words, you say, well, this product contains this. Can we put in a purity test to ensure that it contains essentially what you said it does contain? And that wasn't the time of efficacy, of establishing whether a product actually does what it claims to do. It was a period of the truth in the label. Go to the next slide. And so the mission of United States Pharmacopeia has remained the same since that 1820, and that is to improve global health through public standards and related programs to help ensure the quality, safety, benefits of medicines, dietary supplements, and food ingredients. This is often what is missed by most people. They don't recognize the role that USP plays for dietary supplements and food ingredients. Go to the next slide. And so USP has got about 1,200 staff, about 1,000 volunteers. We have expert volunteers that participate in our standard setting activities. So USP, if you need a simple definition, USP is a scientific, non-profit, standard-setting organization that sets the standards that are recognized by the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act of the United States. Now, the standards we set are those that are enforced by US FDA, and they are the ones that establish that a product is misbranded or adulterated. So when a product doesn't meet our potency, purity, ID, and strength, it automatically means that that product is adulterated, right? And so to set those standards, we work across nearly 500 convention member organizations. Next slide. And so USP is structured as is governed by three key bodies, right? And that is the Council of the Convention, the Board of Trustees, and the Council of the Convention, the Council of the Experts, the Board of Trustees, and of course, USP serving as literally almost like a secretary that's pulling all this together. In fact, recently we just had a convention. Convention happens every 5 years, and some of the resolutions out of that convention that guides our work for the next 5 years is included in one of the slides I have here. And so I wouldn't spend time on this, but nearly 450 convention members spread all over the world. So USP standards are recognized and officially recognized in about 45 countries in the world, including Nigeria. And then it is, and that official recognition means it is written in the Food and Drugs and Cosmetics Act of those countries. Then in several other countries is a reference that is understood. USP is involved in a harmonization of pharmacopoeias around the world, and so we meet frequently with the IP International Pharmacopeia, the Japanese Pharmacopeia, the British Pharmacopeia for harmonization purposes. And so that tells you that the use of the United States Pharmacopeia in setting standards or in implementing standards it happens across all over the world. So one might say, okay, well, you talk about the food, the medicines, the food, the dietary supplements. Once you get into medicines, there are several modalities for medicines. So how do you dev up this work, right? So that's what is being shown on the screen here. We have a group focusing on biologics, a group focusing on small molecule medicines, right? A group focusing on excipients, on general chapters, and you learn a little bit more about that. And then the healthcare quality and safety, where our compounding work is domiciled, right? And lastly, on dietary supplement and herbal medicine, food ingredients. Next. Right. So so USP sets standards. Now, I just want to use this slide to let you know, I wouldn't spend time on that, but we've got close to 10,000, actually, not 9,000, 10,000 of those standards. And those standards are both the reference standards, which I will speak a little bit more to later, the documentary standards also, which is contained in the book. But you see that those standards guide pharmaceutical enterprise from raw materials all the way to use and disposal. Right? So that's what you're seeing on this slide. Next. Right. So talking about how those standards are disaggregated, right? So we have what we call general notices. And general notices provide the basic assumption and definitions that apply to USPNF. So that's what they are. And then you have more than 450 general chapters. And these general chapters address broad technical issues that cut across regulation, manufacturing, and distribution of pharmaceuticals. All the relevant standards are involved in that. So I just give you a quick example that is not related to our today's discussion, or well, is related. So if we're talking about sterility, there is a general chapter that talks about sterility, and if you're talking about dissolution, dissolution of solid oral dosage form. We've got a general chapter that deals with that. Then we have the monographs, the actual monographs that articulate the quality expectations for ID, strength, purity, and performance of the individual molecules, right? So we have more than 5,000 of that. And then there is the reference standards. So what is reference standards? The reference standards are the highly characterized small bottle, the chemicals that is what is used in the quality control laboratories to ensure that primarily generic medicines, that they are equivalent, that they are in terms of physicochemical properties, that they are same with the originator, right? But the reference standards, that we produce. Besides the 4200 that you see here, there are others that are analytical for impurities. There are those that are analytical standards that are used for biologics and all that. And we may speak, if time permits, we can speak a little bit more to that. Next. So USP, again, as I mentioned to you, this global reach it enables us to work closely with some of these organizations you see on the screen. Most of them here are familiar to you. I will need to mention them. But I particularly want to say a few things about the ICH, the International Conference on Harmonization of Pharmaceutical preparations and manufacturing and all that, right? So ICH is the body that was created several years ago, early 90s, if I recollect very well. And what it does is that it's trying to push towards harmonization of standards that are relevant, standards and guidelines that are relevant for pharmaceutical R&D, right? And so with that, the ICH has been coming out with several guidelines. ICH guidelines are classified into 3-4 areas. One is the quality, the safety, and the efficacy guidelines. Then there's the group that we call miscellaneous. And so within the quality guidelines, one of the first ICH guidelines that came out was on what? It was on, besides being on quality, it was on stability studies. And stability studies is very relevant to the work that is done in compounding. Next slide. And so I mentioned about USP operating in cycles, in 5-year cycles. Recently, we launched the 2025-2030 cycle, and you see the mission commitments for those 2030 cycle. Right, and so I highlighted the strengthening of resilience of the global pharmaceutical supply chain, for instance, for you to see that. But the work that our compounding team does contribute predominantly to that, but as well as a few other areas. Next. And so we've got a bunch of things as per impact that our work has contributed in many countries, and probably we'll just want to have this slides quickly pass through without me speaking on them. If you go to next and to the next. But the point is, when you get these slides, I encourage you to go through them, because you will need to see how these contributions have been very impactful to countries. If you go to next, I think that next slide speaks basically about Nigeria, the work we've done. This is on the work we've done with strengthening laboratories. Next slide. Right. So here you're seeing, some of the contributions that USP has done in supporting pharmacies, manufacturers, NAFDAC, and others in Nigeria. USP had worked in Nigeria since 2009. If I recollect, we were formally established about 2014, but 2009 we already started coming in country to help the then NAFDAC. This will not tell a good story about the accomplishments over those years, but suffice that to say that we have worked closely with NAFDAC and have gotten 5 laboratories WHO ISO 17025 accredited, 1 laboratory WHO pre-qualified, that's the laboratory in Yaba, We had worked with NAFDAC to get 2 Nigerian manufacturers to produce products according to WHO standards. In other words, get these products WHO pre-qualified. And then we work with the Honorable Registrar of the Pharmacy Council in supporting some of the reform initiatives that he's trying to advance with regulating pharmacy shops in Nigeria, and also bringing compounding back to life as the origin of pharmacy practice. Next slide. Right. So let me now delve a little bit into the compounding, the work our team does in compounding. So USP compounding standards provides 3 types of public standards for compounding. One is general chapters. If you hit next and next, and then we've got the next. Just click on the compounded preparation monographs, right? So very much like the broader USPNF. So you've got the general chapters, which is again themes that cut across common technical issues, and then you've got the monographs for how you compound those medicines. Next slide, or next click, and then you've got the monographs for literally the active ingredients. If you go to next slide. And forgive me, I'm trying to be a little bit fast here because I don't know how long the connection will hold up. And if it does, then I will create some time for us to ask questions. And so this is the compounded preparation monograph. And on the left side of your screen, you see the contents, the title, the definition, the formula themselves, the procedures, stability indicating assay. For me, very critical. And this is about the beyond use date and several other things that are impacting on stability of compounded medicines, right? Next slide. And so, as you can imagine, there are a host of things that are related to terminology, even as you talk about compounding, right? And how applicable the things you find within the compendium. In other words, when I say compendium, I mean not just only the compounding compendium, but I mean at times USPNF as a whole. So for contents that are below 1,000, and we will eventually talk about 795 and 797, those contents are referenced in general notices and a monograph and other applicable general chapters that are below 1,000, right? And these are really compendia. And when they are compendia, they're applicable. There's regulatory requirements to them. And then there are informational. Informational are contents in the USPNF that are between 1,000 and 1999, right? And then there are the parts that are specific for dietary supplements, and which are those that are numbered above 2,000. Next slide. Right, next. And so just a few comments about the general chapters as it pertains to the compounding compendium. So as you heard, I mentioned 795, 797. This is really what guides the work that Dr. Goben and colleagues that are working in compounding practices with huge experiences they have. This is what they live daily, right? And so, and the 795 talks about non-sterile preparations, the 797, the sterile preparations, and then 800 on hazardous drugs, and 825 for radiopharmaceuticals. Next, the informational parts, if you click next, are the ones that I mentioned here. So the informational part are not necessarily regulatorily required, right? But they are very critical in ensuring good compounding practices, right? So a level 63, for instance, of quality assurance in pharmaceutical compounding, 60 on pharmaceutical calculations. You couldn't have passed pharmacy if you didn't pass pharmaceutical calculations in the first or second year, and of course, pharmaceutics compounding in second year. Well, prescription balances, volumetric apparatus, and the rest. Next slide. So it's just a quick, some few comments about 795 and 797. And again, I wouldn't read it out. These slides are going to be there with you. And as you review them, as soon as I finish, if we have time for questions, you can pose questions. I think that might be, answering your questions might be very valuable for this gathering. And so the purpose is really to provide a minimum practice and quality standards for compounding, particularly for sterile and non-sterile preparations. Is the guidance on applying good compounding practice, as I mentioned, general information to enhance the compounder's ability to extemporaneously compound preparations that are acceptable strength, quality, and purity. It must be used in conjunction with compliance to other state federal compounding laws. So the way compounding is regulated in the US is very interesting. And so for hospital and compounding in community pharmacies, so far is for a named patient basis with some restricted distribution. That is controlled by 503A, right? And then for compounding that is intended for use across state line, that's 503B, and that is subject to CGMP requirement regulated by USFDA. Next slide. And so this is the compounding compendium. I think it was going to be interesting to show you what it looks like. And again, it cuts across the general notices, general chapters, as I mentioned, and the actual monographs. Next. Right. So let me just say a few other things, because it's just a lot of things that we do at USP are all connected, right? So the compounding work that comes out of our healthcare quality and safety division, I just gave you a bit of what they do, but there are several others. For instance, we recently established an expert committee on pharmacogenomics and personalized medicine, basically personalized medicine. So that's a very exciting topic for us now. And so we're not looking only at compounding. Compounding is actually, again, if you think about it, is also addressing personalized medicine, because the justification for compounding may just be because there's a dye in the commercial preparation that the patient cannot tolerate, all right, or there isn't a formulation that is commercially available that you want to compound, right? And so that is personalized medicine, but we are taking it a notch higher to really get into issues about genomic constitution of patients, cytochrome P450 enzyme functions, fast metabolizers, and delayed metabolizers, and how that inform the new medicines, and indeed also even get as far as 3D printing, which is now coming in on stream to also even interface with what compounders do. And so there are just a lot of things going on at USB, and that's why I wish I was there with you, because I would have had the opportunity, not just during this keynote address, but as we mingle and interact, to tell you a lot more about it. But this next few slides is to really tell you about the suite of programs or portfolio of programs that we have within supply chain at USP. And so we start first with saying, okay, well, if you want to address supply chain challenges, the first thing you need is visibility. You want to have visibility about what is challenging the supply chain from high upstream up to downstream. So it has to start from key starting materials to active pharmaceutical ingredients, to finished formulation, to how you package to excipients, of course, excipients and finished formulation, to how you package that finished formulation, right? The container closure that you use to package it, then to the distribution, because the quality of the product can be compromised in the distribution chain, correct? And so all that is part of what we call the entire suite of portfolio of programs we have for addressing it. But it starts first with visibility. So we have a tool we call Medicine Supply Map, which you're seeing on the screen. So that tool enables us to identify the vulnerabilities for the supply chain, particularly upstream. In other words, is there a concentration of places where active ingredients are manufactured? Is the active ingredients made out of one key starting material that is also of concentrated sourcing? Is there a geopolitical challenge to manufacturing a product? Is there a manufacturing complexity to that product? The way it's made, is this subject to regulatory when regulators visit for inspection, for the manufacturer at times to experience problems? So all these things are part of the totality of data that our medicine supply map gather, to use that to define the weaknesses that may be there in the supply chain. And so one of the products that come out of our medicine supply map is what we call vulnerable medicine list. So our medicine supply map, MSM, is able to prospectively, using AI and and hundreds of data points, to prospectively predict drug shortages, and then prospectively say these are the products that may be vulnerable to shortages, hence the vulnerable medicine list, VML. And so if you click twice, click twice, you will see the rest of the portfolio of programs. So next slide and next slide. Right, you see the rest of the portfolio of programs. I won't need to get into them, but suffice that to say, these are all the rest of the portfolio of solutions that we have to address issues related to supply chain shortages. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, and hit repeatedly. So I wouldn't again go into details on this, but this is one of my favorite slides because it tells you how all those portfolio of programs that we have at USP all come together to help to address supply chain issues. And those supply chain issues could as well be a surge in demand, which we are anticipating in the United States, given the recent conclusion from the government that folic acid deficiency or calcium folinate or leucovorin could be implicated in cerebral folate deficiency diseases that are associated with autism. Right. And so based on that, and based on the multiple indications for folic acid, of course, you all know it could be used for prenatal supplementation. It's used as a rescue therapy. The injectable is used as a rescue therapy for when you have folate antagonists, example methotrexate, example primetamine, and all that, right? And several other use cases for folic acid, right? So now with this new evidence that's still very contextual, but that's the evidence we have right now that there could be an upsurge in the demand for leucovorin. We have used this slide to show you how the totality of programs we have at USP can come together to help in increasing manufacturing of leucovorin, right? And specific attention to the second to the last arrow, which is on the HQS, the healthcare quality and safety, because we were able to find out that HQS, which is again our home for compounding at USP, HQS actually have compounding monographs for leucovorin. They have compounding monograph for leucovorin, calcium, and then for compounded injection. They have for oral suspension, and there is for opportunity for continuous review of the formulary on that. So next slide, and I think that slide will get back to those questions I posed earlier. Next slide. Unless you don't want to know if you passed or failed the question. Oh, yeah. So let me speak to this because this is actually the gift I have for you before I will get to the questions. So when Dr. Guben invited me to speak as a keynote for this, I searched within USP that we really have to offer you something. So I'm so glad to let you know that you actually we're offering you access to the entire USP NF, the entire pharmacopeia for free, completely for free. And so this is part of a program we call USP Access for Africa. Next slide. And so this Access for Africa, once you log in, once you go in to access it, we are tracking utilization. And this access that we're providing you is for all of you there in this audience. Is also available for those of you in academia. Is available to the Pharmacy Council of Nigeria, Honorable Registrar, for you to note that. Next slide will show you how you gain this access. So I've provided a link here. All you need to do is click on that link and you get to the site where you complete a small form and you gain that access. Also, once you have that access, you'll be able to see the compounding courses. The kind of compounding courses that Dr. Goben and others take in the US, you will have that and all for free. So that's another thing that I was so glad to bring to you I'm very excited. I couldn't even tell Dr. Goben about this earlier because I was very excited to break this news for you. So let's now get to the questions. I hope that doesn't. I hope you don't fail it or spoil your excitement. Next slide, please. All right. So that was the question. Let's see the answer. Next slide. So the answer is D. Right? If you know, go back so that people see the answer. I don't want them to miss it next time. Yeah, so the answer is D. Our standards become official 6 months after they are published. Right? Next slide. The second question. And then the answer. Next slide. So the answer is all of the above, right? So the standards that are available for compounded and compounding compendium is both 795, 797, and then compounded preparation monographs. So there's a host of materials there. So all you need to do is click on that link I sent to you, go in and register. You have access to this free of charge. I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. I know it took a little much longer time, but I'm really so excited you all, and I hope my voice was able to come through. And I probably would like to show my face for you to see the excitement and the sweat, but that's all showing how happy I am to speak to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jude. We really appreciate your joining us. And we also say thank you to the network. Thank you to the network. You not only unlocked the value chain, you also unlocked our minds. You not only unlocked the value chain, you also unlocked our minds. Yeah. You really did unlock our minds. Vulnerable medicine list. How many of us knew there was a vulnerable medicine list? You see, talk about unlocking minds. Now we'll take some questions. Do we have questions for Dr. Jude? We'll just take 3 questions from the floor. Any burning questions? Yes. Okay, sir.
Thank you so much for that. You see the presentation. The question is, what actually is compounding? Thank you.
Are you a pharmacist? Our pharmacist here is asking you, Dr. Jude, what exactly is compounding?
Several definitions to that, but at USP, we regard compounding as extemporaneously preparing a medicine to meet an intended prescription purpose, right? And so I'm not just stating this now word for word, but essentially that's what it is. So there is a prescription and preparing that extemporaneously to meet a purpose, to improve access. I think nothing is even closer to access than compounding. Compounding is ensuring that people have access to medicine. And compounding is also, for me, about equity, because now you are no longer, denying a subset of the population that doesn't have commercial preparation access to medicine. And so you can imagine often what we do is that we just treat children, pediatrics, as if they are young adults. That's not true. Their pharmacokinetic profiles might differ. Pregnant women, their pharmacokinetic profile, their volume of distribution and all that differ. And so, for some of you who really studied pharmacokinetics, you understand it. So compounding helps address all those issues.
Thank you very much. Okay. Another question from you.
Thank you so very much for that answer. I want to seek clarification on compounding for phase 1 investigational, whether process or research or study. That's informed my asking what exactly compounding is, different from the compounding that I learned in school. We have compounding for phase 1 investigation.
Oh, all right. If I had um, yeah, let me just paraphrase to be certain that I understood your question before venturing into answering that. So you wanted to know uh, what about compounding for IND for investigational new drug? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Perfect, perfect. Yes. So clearly, and again, it depends on the jurisdiction. So if you are doing drug discovery in the United States, there are clear guidelines about, you know, drug, the CMC guidelines, the chemistry, manufacturing, and control guidelines as it relates to investigational new drug. And so when you develop that new chemical entity, and when you have to manufacture the very first batch that is used for clinical trials, there are some guidelines that are associated with that. Now, some of that, may not have to do with compounding of those IND products. I think what is much more clearer as far as the 21 CFR is concerned is really what is required for for getting the first commercial batch, the first investigational batch that should be distributed to PIs, to principal investigators for use in the clinical trials. It might as well be that maybe by nature of the product or for some other purposes that you want to compound them for IND studies or phase one clinical trials. Then there are regulatory requirements and guidelines for that. They are not directly contained in the USPNF, but I can provide you additional insights to that if you're interested. But clearly, whether you're in phase one, phase two, phase three, there are issues associated with quality and the requirements for the way the products are manufactured or compounded. And actually, I wrote an article on that, on particularly on use of on quality, ensuring quality of drugs in particularly phase four studies. Phase four, I didn't do any work with phase one.
Thank you very much, Doc. We'll take, okay, there's going to be a comment in relation to your response, and then one more question, and that will be it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to add just a little thing to what you already said, Dr. Jude. I have known you for a very long time, very versatile. Yeah, when you do clinical trial, sometimes you what we call double blind. Patients should know, investigators should also not know the drug you are giving. So the kind of compounding might take place or repackaging in a way that both the drug you are investigating and the control in that substance should look alike. Probably, I'm sure that's where you're asking that question from, right? Okay, but of course, you're testing a new drug. Every other thing should be, should be constant, right? The active ingredient is what you're really looking at. In clinical trial, you want to make sure the conditions are the same for both groups, even in terms of patient recruitment and all of that. And the drug they're also taking, right? What should be the difference should be the active ingredient. That's what you're trying to do. So you try to make both look alike, and the difference is the active ingredient you're testing. So there might be need, again, just to reiterate, or through concurrently to make sure in terms of both the subject and control, especially if it's double blind, they should look alike, right? So that no one can actually just make intelligent guess, and deliberately give the active one to patients, which will create some bias in the study, and that can affect the overall effect you're looking for, right? Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that clarification. And indeed, this is essentially, I think the phrasing of the question would have helped. This is essentially about what you do to put together the placebo and make sure that it looks exactly like the product that has the active, and so that it becomes truly blinded, so that the principal investigator and the investigator can't even tell the difference, right? So it is very important that in terms of not just formulation but the packaging, that the placebo looks exactly as the active. In clinical trial, what you want to measure is only the active and associate, or every other thing should be equal, and you want to associate improvement in condition to what to the exposure to the active. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Doc. We have one more question for you that we're going to take live. There are several others on the floor, so we'll compile the questions and send them to you via email. Next question.
Thank you.
Yes, recognizing the fact that compounding is a core responsibility of pharmacists, but the drawback in this part of the world is the absence of monograph or formulary. I want to ask, is it possible for your organization to work closely with the Pharmacy Council of Nigeria to encourage availability of monograph so that members will be encouraged, because it's critically a drawback. For those of us who are in it, we know what to do to be able to have one compounded. Thank you.
Yeah, let me also be sure that I had that well. And so you're requesting for access and availability to the monographs. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So that's exactly what you do have now. That was the announcement I made. I'm not sure my audio came through then. So when you click on that link and you register, you will have access to all the monographs contained in the USP compounding compendium. All of them. Right, and that access continues to expand because we actually continue to add new monographs. We have a process where people, researchers, can actually donate monographs or donate their materials. When they donate that, we have laboratories where we test that, we study that, and if that is valid, then we include it in the USP compounding monograph. And so you actually have, that's the announcement I was making, and the screen, what you're seeing on the screen. Once you register, you're going to have access to the entire monograph, compounding monograph we have at USP, and that is entirely free. So in fact, that was the most excitement I got when the leadership of USP allowed me to make this offer to Nigeria. So very thrilled about it, and really want to again just thank Dr. Gruben. This is fabulous. This is unbelievable. The excitement I have with this initiative. The group that work in our compounding division at USP are very keen to stay engaged, particularly if this is a continental initiative, entire Africa. And so they are very keen to stay engaged and continue to see how to support you all. And so we're very, very excited about this gathering. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you for that. So the Access for Africa program is available to all. The link will be sent to every participant in the room. Active link will be sent to every participant in the room, and Dr. Ben will decide how we take it on from there. So we all have access to the monographs, like the doctor has just said. Thank you very much, Doctor. We would allow you continue with other business in Abuja. We appreciate your time. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, and bye, everyone.
So it gives me pleasure. I'm highly honored to do this assignment. Dr. Jude is my boss. So if you were here, I'll be the one presenting to him. But yeah, can you come this way, sir, so that they can catch us? Yes, but today you're wearing the garment of Jude and the garment of USP. So he gave us a wonderful lecture, not just lecture, and gave us a take home, which is the formulary, the access to it. And we are grateful for that. Thank you so much for involving him in this. And on behalf of you and GAPCA, I present this shield.
Number 6, so and calculate, you go see the ratio. The beef self na meat, yo. Whether na asu, them relate, yo. So bring your own crayfish, oh, we go mix, oh, hola.